From Germany to the Lost Ark of the Covenant, 5 surprising truths from the Indiana Jones films. This is by Ben Edwards, Senior Lecturer, Archaeology and Heritage, Department of History, Politics and Philosophy, Manchester Metropolitan University. So there was to be the 50th Indiana Jones film. Sadly, the much-loved movies don't represent the average day at work for most archaeologists, but there is more truth to Indy's swashbuckling adventures than you might think. Crystal skulls do exist, and the Nazi were keen on archaeology. The world's museums are full of artifacts taken from unsuspected tribal people. There are some of the more surprising things that films got right. One concerning crystal skulls and Holy Grails. Some of the artifacts featured in Indiana Jones are not as ridiculous as you might think. Crystal skulls, made from quartz, as featured in the 4th film, do exist. There's even one in the British Museum. Unfortunately, they're probably 19th century forgeries rather than original pre-Columbian or alien artifacts. And while we never found it, at least 9 countries, including Ethiopia and even Egypt, are rumored to be the location of the Lost Ark of the Covenant, the wood and gold chest central to the Raiders of the Lost Ark, and rumored to contain the stone tablets etched with the 10 Commandments. The Holy Grail, featured in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, and which supposedly featured at the Last Supper and caught the blood of Christ during crucifixion, is even more of a mystery. It does not actually appear in literature until the 12th century in a legendary tale of Joseph of Arimathea, in which the Grail is sent for safekeeping to Britain. So, real or not, all of these legendary artifacts do reveal a truth. It's that many archaeologists have a personal Holy Grail, quote unquote. It's probably not an actual artifact. It's objects' relationships with other things, people, or structures that actually allow us to interpret the lives of past cultures. We don't aim to collect objects, but we aim to answer questions about how and why human societies change, and that is our Grail quest. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support, and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box. And then we come to Germany's of the 40s and the nationalists. They were the villains of both Raiders of the Lost Ark in the movies and The Last Crusade, which again is not far from the truth. For that, those people, the archaeology was central to proving their arguments for area superiority, and research missions under the guise of the Ahnenerbe were dispatched to a surprising variety of places in order to demonstrate the influence of Aryan migrants in prehistory, including Poland, Andes, and Tibet. Now, perhaps most telling are the works of Gustav Kosina, whose book German Prehistory, a preeminently national discipline, set out the archaeological justification for the annexation of Poland. Kosina based it on the supposed presence of Germanic people there during prehistory. And while he died before Hitler came to power, he was active while the territorial negotiations at the Versailles Conference after World War I were taking place. So Indiana Jones fighting Nazis in an honorable, historical, accurate portrayal, even if the modern battleground against nationalist pseudo-archaeology is now shifting to Twitter. And then we have the number 3, the Thuggees and the Cult of Kali, a rather strange mishmash of ideas in the Temple of Doom did have some basis. In fact, although very loosely interpreted, the Thuggees, led in the film by the sinister Mola Ram, were a notorious criminal fraternity suppressed by the British in colonial India. The film's main mistreatment of Kali is rather more obvious. Despite popular iconography, the fangs, red eyes, and penchant for blood, this Hindu goddess is generally revered as more than just a destroyer and is rather more nuanced force than one represented in the film. And then number 4, that belongs in a museum? This quote from The Last Crusade film is possibly the most famous line spoken by Indy and the most problematic for archaeologists and museums. It reinforces the idea that Western academics have a right to excavate and display the world's cultural treasures. Indeed, major national museum collections from the British Museum to the Louvre were founded on this very belief, but in a post-colonial world, this attitude has become hotly contested. Do artifacts belong in museums, or do they belong to the people from whom they were taken? What if those artifacts were removed more than a century ago from a tomb built 4,000 years ago, from a place now occupied by people who have no relationship with the original inhabitants? These are the ethical questions museums must struggle with. For example, debates over the return of the Parthenon or Elgin marbles to Athens. They were taken from the Acropolis of Athens, as we know, and they were placed in the British Museum. And these questions are long-running. Cambridge students recently voted to return to Nigeria a bronze cockerel, which was removed in 1897, and artifacts even became embroiled in geopolitics when Egypt severed ties with the Louvre Museum over the return of ancient Egyptian remains. So what is certain is that each claim for repatriation must carefully be weighed on its own merits. Indiana Jones did not always appreciate this. 5, a life of romance and adventure. And we know the indie movies all were always spiders and snakes and things, scorpions and things like that. Icky things. Now, archaeology really can be adventurous. Maybe not adventure of the poison darts and jumping over chasms variety, but the moment when you unearth something really exciting, anything from a sarcophagus to a 10,000-year-old worked flint nodule, depending on your interest, is the reason archaeologists stay in the business. Of course, occasionally it can be dangerous too. Just consider Lord Carnarvon and the Curse of Tutankhamun, practically an Indiana Jones plot device. Personally, I am still waiting to be offered a course in basic whip handling, and I own a trilby rather than a fedora, perhaps a little more time team than Indiana Jones. But while we now avoid sacrificing our students to angry sun gods, even if only because of the health and safety paperwork, if a new major Hollywood movie is a reflection of the central place of archaeology in our cultural consciousness, then I think we should all be pleased. And one final point, the drinking competition in Nepal in Raiders of the Lost Ark, maybe not in the Himalayas, but from personal experience, that was dead accurate. Okay, so that was funny. He's writing this with a lot of humor, obviously. So this was by Ben Edwards, Senior Lecturer, Archaeology and Heritage, Manchester Metropolitan University, on Conversation, Creative Commons. Please leave your comments. Thank you for your support.